y'all. Let's see here. We are going live on YouTube. Today we're going to be talking about gaps. Are you all ready? Are you all familiar with gaps? Gaps are one of the most powerful trading patterns, okay? All right, hold on one second. Let me pull up the YouTube on the side here so we can get the questions in the chat, and let me share my screen here. So I'm going to show you all a couple of gaps across the market so you can see an example of what gaps are and why they're important, what traders are looking for when they happen, both bullish and bearish, different types of gaps as well, whether they're like breakaway gaps, breakout gaps, or even exhaustion gaps, okay? So let me share my screen here. Share. Let's see here. Let's go to Barchart. Google Chrome. Let's share. Okay, perfect. Okay, so let me pull up a couple examples so you all can understand what a gap is. Okay, so NVIDIA's actually been doing quite a few gaps. Gaps are essentially where there's a significant change in price. Okay, now this happens when the next day's open or close is significantly higher than the last day's or the previous day's high or low. Okay, so in this case, the gap was down here. Okay, so you can see here that price opened up much lower than the low of the previous day, creating this gap in price here. Now, when you're trading gaps, what you want to be looking for is essentially that, okay, now we can see here that the gap started here as far as where it started here, it fell here. Okay, so it created this gap in price here. Now, what you're looking for, if you're trading this on the day of the gap, and if you stick with me, I'm going to show you how to trade or find gaps that are happening now, say in pre-market, or maybe it's on an earnings event, because let's see what this was. Let's see if this was earnings. That wasn't earnings. Maybe it was DeepSeek. I think this may have been DeepSeek because this is a huge amount of volume here. So what you see here is the NVIDIA stock price created a gap here. And I have Japanese candles on. I don't know if it matters to you all. I like them because it kind of takes out the color. If you want colored candlesticks, you can use them. But I like to just be like, woosah. Just, I don't care what, up or down. I want to know what happened at the close, right? I want to know where was price. That's it, right? So I just kind of like to filter out the noise. So I'm using Japanese candlesticks here. Um, so gap down here. Now, when there's a gap down, what this does is it creates a little bit of momentum for a bearish trade. So if you're bearish that day, and I'll turn back on the candle so you can see what happens. So in this day, you can see that price opened up here and it moved lower. So if you're bearish, you can trade like this short trend of weakness here, right? And that being if you're a day trader, okay? Now, there's some stocks you may not be able to swing, okay? Because you can see here, if you're somebody that feels like this was, say, a dip and you want to be bullish on the reverse of this, you can wait. You can, I always tell people to look left. Let's make this a little bigger here. So I always tell people to look left. Okay. So if we look left, we can see that price after this gap down, if you were to look left, you can see here that we have, like, let's say you created a window of price here. You can see here that there was a lot of price here from where, candles were essentially, let's turn back on the Japanese so you can see it here. So there was a lot of candles opening and closing and whatnot through this little range. So you can see here there's a lot of price action. That once was a resistance. We broke over it, added a lot of support here, but broke through it, right? Reclaimed it, broke through it, and then kind of went sideways and took off. Okay. So once it gapped down here, you can look for some support here, right? So if you want to trade options, let's say you want to trade options, then you can put, say, limit orders or even limit orders for shares. Let's say you trade shares. This is not financial advice, but you can put them lower towards these levels and allow price to come to you. Okay. Now, if you're trading a bearish trade, you want to make this your target, right? Because at that point, there's going to be demand that's going to come in against your trade. Okay. Now, there's a couple of different, if you are trading options, you can also add the put call ratio. So if you add the put call ratio, you'll see here that going as price moved higher, there was a lot of puts in the market, right? Once that gap happened, people started coming in to trade calls, right? And then price came right back to test that level that we just charted. And you can see there was more calls saying that we now, and this is the other side of the trade, right? Once you're patient on this gap down, if the stock is a very strong stock and it has the potential to come back, you can use this gap as a target, right? So the top side of a downside gap, you can use that as a target. So you can see here as bulls stepped in and started buying calls, they traded this target right here. As soon as they hit their target, they went ahead and started taking some profits here, as you can see, because the put call ratio was increasing, meaning more puts were coming back in. So a lot of call trading here, right at the dip, calls, 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 buying more calls, and then here comes the puts, right? Puts start getting traded here, and then more calls as price starts kind of rebounding at the same level. So you want to use these gaps as an opportunity to find a potential momentum trade. Okay. So that's one example of a gap. And you can also see that right now it's creating these breakaway type of kind of continuation gaps here, right? So we had a gap up here. The only thing about the gaps is, they uh, over 90% of gaps get filled. So at some point, NVIDIA is going to have to fill these gaps here. You just can't, take off like that. I mean, you can, shows a lot of bullish momentum. You never know how long it takes to fill those gaps, right? So let me show you an example of a gap that took off to the bullish side and then eventually came back down to fill that gap. So right here, we have a gap on Palantir, a very popular stock. Let's add volume so you kind of see what pushes price and how that breakout there created a trend on the, I'm clicking the wrong thing here. Let's go to indicators and volume. So we'll add in the volume here. So you can see here, this gap up had an extreme amount of volume coming into it. Maybe this was an earnings trade. So let's put some here. So yes, this was earnings. And this is where earnings kind of plays into the gap trade, right? So as earnings comes up, you can see there's a lot of increase in volume here. And so you can see here that the open was significantly higher than the previous day's high. So if we zoom in here, let's zoom in here. You can see here that price opened all the way up here and the high was down here, creating this gap here in price. Okay. So let's back out here. All right. So, and by the way, there's still a gap down here at around 45 bucks. Okay. So you Palantir guys, you be careful now. There's a gap down here. But as price took off, you can see here we hit a bit of resistance. Let's say, either you're looking at the RSI or the put call ratio. You can see that as price increased after this gap, right? Now you had a lot of calls coming into this. They're trading calls, but as price spoke higher, more people were trading puts against this. Why? Well, here's your target. Here's your target. It's as easy as day, right? And then you have overbought on the RSI. This was manna from heaven, right? Like I said, none of this is financial advice. I'm just a cool dude showing you all some ways to navigate the market. Okay. This is not financial advice, but it should be common sense. But here we are, breakout here, created a bullish trend. Like I said, for the short term, you can usually ride this as momentum. But after some time, especially when you go into an overbought situation and high put call interest rate, open interest ratio, saying that there are a lot of puts and the price is cooked, here comes the weakness, right? But as price came back to close this gap, right, and solidify this price range, you can see that call stepped back in, right? So these are some ways that you can trade gaps across the market. Okay, I want to check the chat, make sure I don't have any questions. Let me know where you all are tuning in from if you're watching this in the future. Want to know where you guys are coming from and where you're tuning in from. Okay, now let's go back to how to find these gaps. Now we've seen a breakdown on the downside and we've seen a breakout to the upside. Now let me show you all where to find these gaps. Okay. Let's start with click on the stocks tab here. Now, if you're looking for, let's say you're a trader, or maybe you're even an investor, you can do this as well. Come into the pre-market and post-market trading. Here you're going to see some of the most active. Now, the most active is based on volume. Okay. After that, we have gainers. This is on percentage gains. Okay. Now, your losers is on your negative side of the percentage gains. Okay. But then here's that heat, baby, the gap up and gap downs. Okay. Now, this section in particular is going to be showing me, and like I said, you can see the earnings here on the side because some of these moves may be caused by earnings, right? So we can see here that the earnings came up and it had a gap in the price. Okay. Couple earnings, yeah, a lot of earnings on this one's got earnings coming up and it's already moving before earnings, right? So this is a way that you can spot potential moves before earnings, or after earnings, right? But the thing that we're looking for is the fact that these are moving. So these are high momentum stocks. So if we click on full list here for the gap ups, okay, and we click on flip chart. Now so these are going to be in percent price. So it's going to show me, I mean, because here's your price range, right? This is by dollar, but this is by percentage gain. So when we look at the flip charts here, we're going to see some gap ups. Okay, so we're going to see a gap there. You go to this next chart, we're going to see a gap here in price. Let's go to First Solar. Gap, huge gap price here. Now, so this creates momentum, okay? But in the future, it's gonna have to close this year. But there's, like I said, you always see this right before a gap too, this increase in volume. Now, this is show you that there was a lot of buying pressure pushing this price higher, right? And then this explosion having the opening price open here. So if we change this back over to the candles, you can see a large green candle there, right? So gaps create these opportunities for short-term trades if you want to trade the momentum in the direction that it is there. But in the future, just know that it does have to um, uh, come back and close these. Okay, another gap here on Coinbase. These are just a couple stocks that you all are familiar with. So you can see here a gap up from 230 there, and then it's looks like 215. Let's say 215 will be the downside range here. Okay, so we've got some momentum here, and if you want to say, oh, well, where could it go? Well, let's look at the past, right? So we've seen in the past that we had a large sort of gap. It's not a, I mean, it's more of a value gap here, just like price just completely, I mean, bears took over uh this day. And you can see here this balance here where bulls are saying, well, we're back. Okay. So you can see here that 267 in this range. And I like to create ranges. So let's say 300 is the psychological level that everybody's trying to reach, but we're gonna have to cross this wall here. Okay. So that's a way that you can find gap ups. Okay. Now gap downs, it's going to be on the downside. Let's say you're feeling bearish. Let's say you're still one of these bears trying to look for these opportunities for some exhaustion, right? Then you can turn on the gap down, and then we'll change this over to the candle so you can see here. So you can see this is a gap down here. And I like to come in and do some charting too. Like just as an exercise, you can come in here and click on some of these lists and just do some charting. Let me see if we know some names here. UNH. Wow. It's a gap. Yeah, this is a gap I've actually been watching myself because we had a huge gap up from right here at this level at 582. And it gapped down here. Let me move this one to 489. Let's say 490. Okay. So it gapped from 585 or 580 essentially down to 490. Right now, I'm not going to go buy this gap, right? Because there's weakness in the price. Like I said, if you're a buyer, if you're an investor, you want to find these opportunities because we have a gap to look forward to in the future. Okay. So you wait for the weakness, but you're looking for volume. What you want to do is look for volume. Now you might have, let's say you saw the volume here, but this is the first day's breakout. So if you're an investor, if you're a buyer, you want to be bullish, you want to see an increase in volume after that short-term momentum trade, right? Because you have to understand that bears are going to come in and fade this. This is an exhaustion. This is saying that there's so much selling pressure. There was a complete abscess in trading here and completely sent shares lower instantly. right? So that's saying that there's a lot of people running for the hills, right? So bears are just salivating at this trade. So you never want to try to step in and catch a falling knife, okay? That's like rule number one. Never try to catch a falling knife. If something is falling, look for a volume increase. Now, we had an additional gap down. Okay, so now we have another gap down from 375 all the way down here to 342. Now, if we look back at where we could potentially go in the future, let's say we got a little bit of trading here. So we had some resistance here in the past, and then we'll add another line here just as a range. So we had a lot of consolidation here. We had a complete fallout from oh, this is COVID, and recovered here. Recovered to this price to trade sideways, came back to this level to retest it and took off from there, never came back. Now we're back at these levels, right? So we're essentially trading at prices from, wow, 2020. Oh my goodness. So this is a huge gap. So if you're an investor, right, you're looking for these gap down opportunities in good names, right? In stocks that you believe that will come back. But like I said, on that first gap down, you want to give it a little second to breathe. But this is quite a bit of volume. We can see that this is an extremely large increase in volume. So you could have probably, let's look at what traders on option traders are doing on the back end here. RSI is cooked and volume on the options or the open interest is going completely on the bullish side. So you can see here that that option traders are buying this up, right? They are taking profits on puts. They are closing these puts. There's a decrease in open interest of puts essentially, right? Which means that there could be an increase in calls. The lower this number goes, the more bullish it is, right? So you can see here that, as bearish as this may look, people are trading calls. Okay. And this is cooked on the RSI oversold here. So to me, full disclosure, this is something that I like. I like this. I like UNH. This is one of the largest healthcare insurance companies in the United States. So another name you might know is Rigetti. Let's see, it had a gap down on earnings today. You can see that a lot of people are still kind of holding puts. They're not giving up on this trade. And after a gap down, it could potentially move lower. So let's kind of zoom in and take a look at this, see what we got here. So we do have a gap down here that it never really closed. So I think people were hoping they could close that gap, but we got another gap down. Okay, so let me zoom in here so you can see it. And you can see here that price was up here trying to take off, but it looks like we had like an evening star almost. And boom, here's your gap. And bears definitely took over today, right? So you can see there's a lot of selling pressure here. It's not a big gap, but it is a gap because it's still the fact that the opening price is still significantly lower than the low of the previous day. Okay. So this is a huge gap here for Rigetti. So you'll probably see a little bit of weakness in this price. It almost looks like it's trading in a range. Let's actually take a look at this. I'm not going to stay on here too long. Just wanted to show you all some different gaps on here. But what you want to do when you're trading these gaps on, yeah, if we break down below, let's see, say 965, we could see some more weakness here. So, but that's not financial advice. We're just looking at some stuff. But let's say you are liking what you see, or maybe you want to filter what you see, right? You want to focus on maybe some larger companies. We can screen this. Okay. So once you found your gap, say in pre-market or post-market trading, you can actually come in here and screen this based on pre-market settings. Okay. Now, let's say we want to do market cap or something. I'm going to do this as an example really quick to add this in here. And then let's say, what's another one? Sector. Okay. Market sector. Okay. Let's add that in there. And let's say I only want to focus on large and mega cap, right? So what else can I funnel this through? Let's say volume as well. So we want something over let's say, where's the volume I just put in here? I'll add, and then we want to say over 7 million, say 7 million. I can't see how many zeros. Okay, zero. There we go. Okay, see results. And this will filter this list for me. Okay, so I went from having hundreds of stocks now down to 22. So I have large cap stocks in that I can view as through sector, right? Now, if I like this, if I want to find gaps gap ups in the pre-market that happen for large cap stocks, you can see Nvidia did that today as well. And you can, like I said, you can flip through these pretty quick and use the flip charts here so we can see all these gaps that we just charted, okay? So Meta even had a gap. Wow, Boeing had a gap. So this is a great way to find these gaps really easy, okay? And like I said, it may not be a big gap, but the fact that the price has left the space between the previous high, that's a gap still, right? So you can scroll through and man, Oracle, Broadcom, a lot of great names in here gapping. Okay, we got some bullish momentum. I mean, even the S&P 500 gapped up. So a lot of stocks are going to gap up if an index gapped up. So with that being said, if you like this, you want to stay updated on pre-market gaps and large market cap, whatever else it is you put on the screener based on whatever you trade by beta, open interest, volume, whatever it is. Put that in there, save it here as a screener. Once you save it as a screener, you can also click here and say, hey, at the market open or end of the day, send me this, or midday. Maybe you want some trades coming in during the day. Here it is right here. But with this pre-market, it's usually going to probably be your market open. And then if you still want that report during the midday, you can click save, boom, it'll send you that. But you can do this when any of these lists, you can screen them first, save it as a screener, which will then set it up where you can get these alerts based on your screener. Okay. Now, another thing we can do is, let's say we want to watch these. Okay. Now, if you want to watch these, you can scroll over here and say, hey, I want to watch First Solar. Okay, you can add it to a watch list, which I've actually done. I actually created a gap trades watch list so we can come back and see these in the future. So when you're watching these videos, go look at these tickers and see what happened, right? You'll see that if it was a gap down, there was a bearish trade that eventually could have reversed and closed the gap. If there's a gap up, then we're usually looking for a bullish trade to continue that until it fades into that sort of RSI overbought or maybe some decrease in volume. And then you see a lot of selling pressure to bring us back down to close that gap. Okay. So you can watch these so you can come back, you can click this and save the whole watch list. Okay, so I can create a whole gap trade watch list for this week. You can replace an old one. Let's say you're just trading gaps throughout the week. You can replace them or append it, right? So there's different ways that you can kind of navigate this. Okay. So this is the pre-market and post-market. So there's another gap up and gap down for things that are already have gapped up. They're not today's gap. So what I was just showing you there was sort of today's gaps happening. This is going to be the gap ups and the gap downs that have already probably happened, but this is a way that you can keep up with them. Maybe you didn't catch them in the pre-market and the post-market trading for the earnings actions or any sort of news reactions, but then you want to see where they are. You can find them here. So these are all, so just in case you missed them on the pre-market, don't worry. It's not like you got to go looking for gaps every day, but you can set those alerts to do that. But if you want to just come and see where the gaps are across the market, come back to this page. Then you can rearrange these based on volume, whatever you want to do, right? So you can see here, there's these signals as well. Let's go back to the main view because the main view will show you where the gap up is as well. So when you go to the flip charts, you'll be able to see these gaps on the chart. Okay. Let's see if we got anything in here. No, this is showing a lot of tickers, and that's why I say you really want to screen it. It's not, I mean, because this is a great gap. So right now, coin is bullish. We talked about this one though. I'm not going to hold you off for long. Don't want to make these too long. Remember, if you come here for the gap up and gap down as well, you can click here for screen. And then this is where you can select gap up or gap down based on just things that have happened. So the pre-market one is where you're screening for ones that happen in pre-market. Maybe you're somebody that's looking for trades in the pre-market and you're looking for bearish or bullish opportunities throughout the day based on that momentum. You can do that for the pre-market. This one is just if you like gaps and you're looking for gaps with certain market caps or now, and I keep using these as a example, but you can do whatever you want. You can click on this too and find different ones, whether it's technical analysis. We can put RSI in here, right? So relative strength index, we'll go with 14-day. We can add that and then click see results. I didn't really filter it, but let's say you're looking for gaps that are oversold, right? Or overbought, right? So these are gaps that are technically going up into the too far range. So if we pull up flip charts, we'll see that these are, turn on the RSI so you can see it. These are stocks that are flying high in RSI, okay? Wow, I'm rapping now. But yeah, you can see here that these are stocks that are flying high. So based on how I arrange these, let's say I want to look at stocks that are oversold, I can then go back to flip charts and it'll rearrange them in this oversold. So let's go back to RSI and you'll see here that these are stocks that are coming up oversold right here. So you can use the ribbon at the top or the banner, the arrows here on the side, okay? Does that make sense to everybody? Hope this helps, but you'll be able to see where these gaps are on the chart as well. So if I remove this, you'll see that this gap happened in the past, but this could be the time at which this gap could be coming back to close, right? Because like I said, this particular filter is going to be showing us gaps that happen in general, stocks that have a gap, right? So if you missed the pre-market or the post-market opportunity when it happened, this is where you find them where it may be already reacting, maybe the move already happened, but you can then rearrange them based on market cap or volume or relative strength index, whatever you want. Like I said, you can save the screener, set up alerts right here for you to receive now an alert on gaps or gap ups or gap downs based on these screeners that you have here. Let's say you say large and mega cap, right? Gap ups and gap downs across the market that are maybe you want, gap downs that are over sold or something, right? You're looking for bear setups. Whatever that is, you can do that there. Okay. Now I want to show you one more thing here. If you come over to Barchart Insights, so if you go to news and then click on all authors, okay, and then scroll over to Barchart Insights, I've actually got an article here on gaps, okay, so where is it? Where's the gap article? Okay, trading gaps right here. So if you want to learn more, you want to watch a full video on what I just covered really quick, you can watch this video. It's a full video on how to trade gaps, okay? So you can come here, go to Barchart Insights author, and then if you follow me, you'll get these articles all the time. So I'm always posting little educational articles, how to trade pre-market and after hours, whole kind of just break down step-by-step guides with videos, okay? So if you ever want to learn anything, got a lot of content for you, okay? Plus two, you can always click on the Learn tab, go over to Site Education, and then under here, you can also find similar videos. I don't know, here to go, how to find gaps right here, right? So on this Site Education page, there's a lot of different topics that we cover. And all of these videos, I've created some videos to help guide you through different tools that you can use based on the strategies you're looking for. So I hope that was helpful for you guys. If you've got any questions, drop them in the comments for me. I'm going to close this out. And that is it. I appreciate you all. If you need any of the links to Barchart, I will put them in the description. You can also click the link in my bio. If you want to access any sort of options flow data or set up multiple email alerts, you're going to need a Barchart Premier membership. So you can get a 30-day free trial for that in the link in my bio. Okay, I'm gonna also drop it in the description. And remember, if you all have any questions, drop them in the comments. If there's anything you want to learn or me to do a video about, just drop that in the comment too. Let me know where y'all are tuning in from. I want to know, how far is this going? How far is this reaching? I see a lot of people are starting to follow. So I want to make sure I keep coming up and showing up for you all. Okay. So until next time, man, I'll see y'all for the next one. I'll base whatever the next one is on whatever your questions are in the comments. Okay. I'm also going to be doing some Sunday lives on IG, so always stay tuned there. I'll be on IG at L Ray J, ELREYJ at L Ray J on Instagram Sunday nights. We'll keep it coming. Okay. I'm gonna keep these coming, teaching you all how to use the tools on bar charts so you all can learn how to navigate the market, whether it's futures, forex, stocks, options. Hey, there's plenty of tools for you. Okay. Like I said,